Welcome to This Week in Hastings Headline History, where we take a look back at what was making news in Hastings and St. Johns County, Florida, over a century ago. In this podcast, I'll share with you a few of the stories out of the pages of the Hastings Herald, which was published weekly in the early 1900s. So sit back and enjoy as I share a few of the stories from January 1920. City election February 8th is a subject of interest. Local interest in the forthcoming special election to provide the town with a mayor and 5 new councilmen is beginning to make itself evident on many sides. Already there are strong rumors being circulated to the effect there will be 2 complete tickets presented to the voters and that the coming election will prove a real fight for supremacy of the 2 distinct factions in local political affairs. It is recognized generally that the recent policy of the town council has been too much along the lines of the argument advanced by men who feel that if they do nothing at all, they can make no mistakes. For months, it has been virtually impossible to gather a full quorum of the council for a meeting. Petty personal matters have also been allowed to crop up at frequent intervals, resulting in quarrels that held back the affairs of the town. The expiring council also seems to have shown a strong tendency to duck under criticism, and there have been several abortive attempts on the part of members to induce the entire council to resign as a body. Such a condition of affairs, which some prominent local citizens do not hesitate to designate as kiddish child's play, has aroused the stronger element of the town to the need of action. After having been served for a year by a council they declare has only been half alive, the dissatisfied citizens, who number a large percentage of the voters of the town, consider it necessary to place the town's affairs in different hands. Several important projects at present are demanding the attention of the town, and others are due to come up at a near date. Therefore, the citizens feel that the town must be served by a council which will be active rather than passive, and which will accomplish the things for which it was elected. General gain in selling prices of potatoes noted by Market Report. The Market Reporter, the new official publication of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, devotes considerable space in its second issue to the potato situation throughout the country. It notes a general gain in selling prices all along the line, both in producing and consuming markets. The circus comes to town. Local boys, both with and without gray whiskers, enjoyed one of the events of the year Wednesday, when Hastings was visited by a real sure-enough circus. The circus, Rhoda's Royals, arrived on somewhat short notice and without sufficient advance billing, but despite that fact, a large crowd was on the streets early Wednesday morning to see it arrive. As is customary with all things being transported by the East Coast Railroad these days, however, the circus was held up somewhere along the route and failed to arrive until afternoon, too late for a matinee performance. The crowd had not become discouraged, though, and was on hand to watch while elephants hitched to wagons transported the circus belongings from the cars to the circus grounds, and circus animals of various descriptions moved through the streets. The evening performance was given before an audience which filled the Big Top to overflowing. The performance was unusually good for that of a small traveling circus, and proved to be one of the most pleasing amusements which has visited Hastings this season. Chiropractic is ably discussed. As a number of readers of the Herald has of late expressed interest in chiropractics, what it is and how it is practiced and what it accomplishes, the Herald has requested Dr. F.A. Foster, chiropractor, to prepare a series of several articles explaining it and its methods. The Herald wishes to state at the outset the articles are not published as a reflection of views of the Herald's editorial department, but are printed purely for informative purposes. Now, while you may find it weird that such attention was being brought to chiropractic services back in 1920, at that time, chiropractic care was relatively new in the States. It was first written about in the late 1890s, and the first 20 years of the 1900s, it was still thought of as a mystical art based in spiritualism and naturalism more than medicine. As a matter of fact, in those early 1900s, some chiropractors were being jailed for practicing medicine without a license. There was no licensing for chiropractic, and that licensing would not come overnight. It would take from 1913 all the way until the 1970s for chiropractors to get licensing statutes in all 50 states. Was standing at attention when his memory returned. Walter H. Campbell, a sergeant in the supply company of the 56th Regiment of the Regular Coast Artillery Corps of Camp Jackson, South Carolina, is the man who appeared at police headquarters here several days ago and stated that he had completely lost his memory and he did not know who he was or where he came from. But Campbell called the police headquarters last night and said he was in Hemming Park when his memory returned to him. He said when his memory returned, the band in the park was playing the Star-Spangled Banner and he was standing at military salute. Campbell now recalls he had been 7 years in the regular army and saw service in France. He says he still does not know why he came here and does not remember having been in Savannah, Georgia, but a railway ticket from Savannah to Jacksonville indicated that he came here from the former place. Campbell says his home is in Maine. He has telegraphed to his company commander. Now it's time for Talk of the Times, where I give you a glimpse of what people were thinking over 100 years ago. This editorial came out right after an election that saw just 8 people to get out to vote on not even a full field of candidates, and it questions everyone's pride in their community. It's titled, Hastings, a Town or a Fizzle? Unlike artists, musicians, and successful crapshooters, good towns are made, not born. A town may be paved with gold, flowing with oil, and filled with every natural resource known to man, and yet be a poor place in which to live, unless its citizens take a strong and active interest in its welfare. Unless a man takes a real and active interest in the affairs of his town, he is at best only an indifferently good citizen, and may at any moment become a poor one. Indifference on the part of real citizenship gives the Bolsheviki and anarchists their chance to start trouble in various cities, and time and again resulted in unlimited graft and has been directly responsible for more misgovernment than any other dozens contributing causes. A town that allows its annual election to pass with only 3 candidates appearing for 7 offices and only 8 votes cast out of a possible 75 or more is not only backward, but closely approaches being decadent. A town that won't furnish sufficient candidates to fill its own seats and that is too indifferent to vote for such candidates as do appear is hardly in line to gain a very serious or respectful hearing from county or state officials when it goes after things that must come from outside its borders. Every man owes it to himself and his community to participate in local affairs, to vote in all local elections, and, if occasion demands, to become a candidate for office. A second election made necessary because of the failures of the regular election is coming soon. It will then be up to Hastings citizens to show whether it is their desire to have a real town with strength to demand and obtain what it needs, or an impotent collection of houses too lacking interest and too divided in purpose to be anything more than a laughingstock outside its own environs. This week there was also a joke posted in the paper about the election mess. It goes, "When it comes to being candidates for local offices, Hastings citizens all seem anxious to run. But, like the New England farmers' mules, the darn cusses run in the wrong direction." I hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Hastings Headline History. This podcast was brought to you by Presenting the Past, bringing history back to the present through historic presentations and the sale of treasures from days gone by. This episode was written and produced by me, Michelle Murillo, with the aid of vintage copies of the Hastings Herald. Now it's time for this week's musical memory, when we listen back to a song that everyone was listening to 100 years ago. This week's musical memory is from 1919. The singer this week is Henry Burr. Burr was a Canadian tenor who got a very early start. In 1887, the 5-year-old Burr was already singing in front of audiences. At the age of 20, he was working with all the record labels of the times: Columbia, Edison, Victor. One of the most prolific recording artists, it's estimated in his career he sold about 240 million records. And when radio became a big deal, Burr was right there, becoming a well-known radio performer. His voice is also said to have been the first transcontinental broadcast. He sang into a telephone in New York, and it was heard at the other end of the line at a diner in California. Here's this week's multi-talented performer, Henry Burr, with That Wonderful Mother of Mine.
The moon never beams without bringing me dreams of that wonderful mother of mine. The birds never sing but a message they bring of that wonderful mother of mine, just to bring back the time that was so sweet to me, just to bring back the days when I sat on her knee. You are a wonderful mother, dear old mother of mine. You'll hold a spark down deep in my heart till the stars no longer shine. Your soul shall live on forever, on through the fields of time, for there'll never be another to me like that wonderful mother of mine. You are a wonderful mother, dear old mother of mine. You'll hold a spark down deep in my heart till the stars no longer shine. Your soul shall live on forever, on through the fields of time, for there'll never be another to me like that one.